A psychopath falls in love with me and won't leave me alone. She's obsessed with me. I never imagined my life would take such a bizarre turn. Up until a few months ago, I was just an ordinary person living an ordinary life. My days were filled with the usual routine of work, family gatherings, and occasional outings with friends. I took comfort in the predictability of my schedule and the familiarity of my surroundings. My family was my rock, always supportive and loving, providing a sense of stability that I had grown to cherish deeply. Everything changed when she came into my life. At first, it seemed like a serendipitous encounter. One of those moments you don't think much of at the time but later realize was the start of something significant. She was strikingly beautiful, with a magnetism that was hard to ignore. Her attention felt flattering, even intoxicating. Little did I know, this seemingly charming woman would soon reveal a darker side that would disrupt the peace and security I had always known. I met her at a family friend's birthday party. She was introduced to me as Anna, a distant cousin of the host. Her bright smile and engaging conversation quickly drew me in. We talked for hours that evening, discovering shared interests and laughing at each other's stories. There was something about her that made me feel like I had known her forever, a sense of ease and connection that I rarely experienced with new acquaintances. As the weeks went by, Anna started appearing more frequently in my life. At first, it was subtle. She would show up at the same coffee shop where I grabbed my morning latte or casually bump into me during my evening walks. I thought it was a happy coincidence, a pleasant surprise to see a familiar face in the crowd. We exchanged numbers, and soon she was texting me daily, her messages filled with enthusiasm and warmth. It felt good to have someone so interested in me, someone who seemed to genuinely care about my thoughts and feelings. Our interactions quickly became more personal. She invited me to dinner at her place, cooked elaborate meals, and always seemed to know exactly what I liked. It was as if she had a sixth sense about my preferences and desires. I felt special, almost pampered by her attention. Yet, there was an undercurrent of intensity in her gaze, a fervor that was both captivating and unsettling. At that time, I couldn't pinpoint what it was, but there was something about Anna that made me slightly uneasy. I brushed it off, convinced that I was overthinking things. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a whirlwind that would soon engulf my entire life. Our relationship progressed rapidly. Anna was unlike anyone I had ever met. Dynamic, intelligent, and fiercely attentive. She had a way of making me feel like the center of the universe. She remembered every detail I shared with her, no matter how trivial. I found myself looking forward to our conversations, eagerly anticipating the moments we would spend together. Her presence became a bright spot in my routine, a welcome distraction from the mundanity of everyday life. Anna's charm was undeniable. She had a knack for making every encounter feel special, from surprise picnics in the park to spontaneous weekend getaways. Her energy was infectious, and I felt a magnetic pull toward her that I couldn't resist. She showered me with compliments and thoughtful gestures, each one carefully crafted to make me feel valued and adored. It was intoxicating, this whirlwind of affection and attention that she directed solely at me. However, the intensity of her emotions began to show in subtle ways. She would get disproportionately upset if I missed a call or delayed responding to a text. Her excitement when we were together often bordered on manic, her eyes gleaming with an unsettling fervor. While part of me was flattered by her apparent devotion, another part grew increasingly wary. There were moments when her enthusiasm felt overwhelming, almost suffocating. But I dismissed these feelings, chalking them up to my own insecurities. After all, wasn't this what everyone wanted? To be loved so completely? It wasn't long before the cracks began to show. Anna's seemingly benign quirks started to take on a more troubling tone. She became increasingly possessive, always needing to know where I was and who I was with. At first, I mistook her constant check-ins for caring concern. But then she started showing up unannounced at places she knew I would be, her excuses flimsy and her eyes glinting with an unsettling intensity. One evening, I was out with friends, and my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Anna. "Where are you? Who are you with? Why didn't you tell me you were going out?" Each message was more frantic than the last. When I didn't respond right away, she showed up at the restaurant. her face a mask of forced calm but her eyes blazing with anger. My friends exchanged uneasy glances, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Her behavior was starting to feel less like affection and more like surveillance. The turning point came when she hacked into my social media accounts. I discovered it when I tried to log in one day and found my passwords had been changed. Panicked, I called her, and she calmly admitted to it, claiming she just wanted to make sure there were no secrets between us. Her words were laced with a chilling logic that left me speechless. This was no longer about love or concern. It was about control. My discomfort grew, but I found myself caught in a web of guilt and fear, unsure of how to extricate myself from her obsessive grip. As Anna's behavior grew more erratic, the impact on my life became undeniable. She would call me incessantly, leaving dozens of voicemails if I didn't answer. Her visits became more frequent and unannounced, often at the most inconvenient times. My friends and family began to notice, their concerned questions only adding to my stress. I felt trapped, constantly on edge, wondering when and where she would appear next. The breaking point came one night when I returned home to find Anna waiting on my doorstep. She looked disheveled, her eyes wild with desperation. "Why haven't you been answering my calls?" she demanded, her voice trembling. I tried to calm her down, explaining that I had been busy with work, but she wouldn't listen. Her anger escalated into a full-blown meltdown, her accusations becoming more paranoid and irrational. She claimed I was avoiding her, hiding things from her, and that I didn't love her anymore. The intensity of her outburst left me shaken. For the first time, I felt genuinely afraid of her. It was clear that her obsession had reached a dangerous level, and I could no longer ignore the threat she posed. My life had become a constant state of anxiety, my every move scrutinized and controlled. I knew I needed to take action, but the thought of confronting Anna filled me with dread. How do you reason with someone who refuses to see reason? How do you escape from someone who is determined not to let you go? Determined to regain some control over my life, I decided to put some distance between us. I started by limiting my interactions with Anna, cutting down on the number of calls and visits. I made excuses about being swamped with work and other commitments, hoping she would take the hint and back off. But each step I took to create space only seemed to fuel her obsession further. Anna's reactions to my distancing efforts were extreme. When I didn't respond to her texts immediately, she would flood my phone with messages, alternating between pleas for forgiveness and angry accusations. She began showing up at my workplace, waiting for me outside and causing scenes when I tried to avoid her. My colleagues started to notice, their whispers and concerned looks adding to my growing sense of isolation and dread. One night, I decided to have a frank conversation with her, hoping to make her understand that I needed some space. We met at a quiet cafe, and I laid out my concerns as gently as I could. Her initial reaction was one of shock, her eyes wide with disbelief. But as I continued to talk, her demeanor shifted. She became defensive, then hostile. She accused me of seeing someone else, of betraying her trust. Her voice grew louder, drawing the attention of the other patrons. I felt a mix of fear and helplessness, realizing that reasoning with her was futile. By the time the conversation ended, I knew I had only made things worse. Anna's obsession had reached a point where any attempt to pull away was seen as a direct threat to her fragile sense of control. It was becoming impossible to hide the situation from my family. The constant anxiety and fear had taken a toll on me, and my parents and siblings noticed. One evening, during a family dinner, my mother asked me if everything was all right. Her concerned tone and the worried looks from my siblings were enough to break the dam of silence I had built around myself. I confided in them about Anna, detailing the increasingly alarming behavior and my unsuccessful attempts to create distance. Their reactions were a mix of shock, anger, and concern. My father immediately suggested going to the police, while my mother worried about escalating the situation further. My sister, always the pragmatic one, recommended seeking advice from a therapist who specialized in obsessive behavior and stalking. Their support was a balm to my frazzled nerves, but the fear of Anna's retaliation loomed large in my mind. We decided on a cautious approach. I would document everything, texts, emails, incidents, while trying to limit direct contact with Anna. My brother, a tech-savvy guy, helped me secure my online accounts and advised me on ways to protect my digital privacy. Despite the new precautions, the sense of being watched and controlled was inescapable. Anna's presence hung over me like a dark cloud, her obsession unyielding and relentless. The situation reached a boiling point a few weeks later. I had been meticulously documenting Anna's behavior and following my family's advice to limit contact. But one evening, after an exhausting day at work, I found Anna waiting outside my apartment. Her eyes were dark, her expression a twisted mix of desperation and rage. I knew this confrontation was inevitable, but nothing could have prepared me for the intensity of it. "Why are you doing this to me?" she screamed, her voice echoing through the empty hallway. "I thought you loved me." Her accusations grew louder, more irrational, as she blocked my path, refusing to let me enter my own home. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to remain calm, but the fear was overwhelming. I took a deep breath and tried to reason with her. "Anna, you need to leave. This isn't healthy for either of us." My voice trembled despite my efforts to stay composed. She looked at me as if I had betrayed her in the worst possible way, tears streaming down her face. Her emotional volatility was terrifying. In a last-ditch effort, I firmly told her that if she didn't leave, I would call the police. That threat seemed to snap something in her. Her face twisted with anger, and for a moment, I thought she might physically lash out. But instead, she turned on her heel and stormed away, shouting that this wasn't over. The encounter left me shaken to the core. I knew I had crossed a line with her, and there would be consequences. The urgency to seek professional help and legal protection became more pressing than ever. The next day, I took the first step toward reclaiming my life. I scheduled an appointment with a therapist who specialized in obsessive behavior and stalking. Sitting in the therapist's office, I poured out the whole story, from the initial charm to the escalating terror. The therapist listened intently, offering validation and practical advice. We discussed strategies for maintaining my safety and managing my fear, and she emphasized the importance of setting firm boundaries with Anna. After the therapy session, I went to the police station to file a report. With my documented evidence in hand, I detailed Anna's relentless harassment. The officer I spoke with took my concerns seriously, assuring me that they would investigate and suggesting I seek a restraining order. Though the process was intimidating, it felt like a step in the right direction. Taking these actions gave me a small sense of control amidst the chaos Anna had created. That evening, I called a family meeting to update them on my progress. My parents, siblings, and I discussed safety measures we could implement at home and work. My brother installed security cameras around my apartment, while my father helped me change the locks. My family's support was unwavering, their presence a comforting reminder that I wasn't alone in this battle. Despite the fear and uncertainty, I felt a glimmer of hope. With professional help and legal protection, I was determined to break free from Anna's grasp and reclaim my life. As the days passed, Anna's retaliation escalated. She started sending me disturbing emails and text messages, filled with threats and manipulative pleas. She alternated between professing her undying love and promising revenge if I didn't come back to her. Each communication left me feeling more on edge, more aware of the danger she posed. One evening, I returned home to find my apartment door vandalized with graffiti. My heart sank as I realized Anna had found a way to get to me despite my precautions. The violation of my personal space shook me to the core, reinforcing the realization that Anna's obsession had spiraled out of control. I immediately called the police and showed them the evidence. They took photos and assured me they would increase patrols in my area. That night, I stayed with my parents, unable to shake the feeling of being watched, of never truly being safe. Anna's relentless pursuit continued in various forms. She would show up at places she knew I frequented, leaving me no choice but to change my routines. She tried contacting mutual friends and family members, attempting to manipulate them into revealing my whereabouts. Each incident further fueled my determination to protect myself and break free from her dangerous grip. The turning point came unexpectedly during a routine check-in with my therapist. We were discussing strategies for coping with the ongoing harassment when she mentioned a recent legal development. Anna had violated the temporary restraining order that had been issued against her, leading to her arrest. Learning this was a mix of relief and anxiety. On one hand, Anna's arrest meant immediate protection from her relentless pursuit. On the other hand, it confirmed the seriousness of the situation. The legal proceedings that followed were emotionally draining, requiring me to recount every detail of Anna's harassment to authorities and lawyers. Despite the initial relief, I knew Anna's obsession wouldn't simply disappear. In the weeks that followed, I continued therapy to address the emotional trauma and rebuild my sense of security. My family remained steadfast in their support, helping me navigate the aftermath of Anna's arrest and ensuring I felt safe at all times. The experience forced me to confront the vulnerabilities within myself and recognize the strength it took to break free from Anna's manipulation. It reshaped my perspective on relationships and personal boundaries, emphasizing the importance of trusting instincts and seeking help when needed. Ultimately, Anna's arrest marked the beginning of my journey toward healing and reclaiming my life. Though scars from the ordeal remain, I am grateful for the unwavering support of my loved ones and the professionals who guided me through one of the darkest chapters of my life. In the aftermath of Anna's arrest and subsequent legal proceedings, a sense of calm gradually settled over my life. With the support of my family, friends, and therapist, I began to rebuild my sense of security and regain control over my routines and emotions. The restraining order against Anna was extended, providing a legal barrier that allowed me to start feeling safe again. I focused on self-care, engaging in activities that brought me joy and helped me reconnect with my sense of identity outside of the trauma I had experienced. Therapy sessions became less about immediate crisis management and more about processing the long-term effects of Anna's obsession on my mental and emotional well-being. Over time, the fear and anxiety that had once dominated my thoughts started to diminish. I learned to trust myself again, to listen to my instincts, and to set clear boundaries in all aspects of my life. The experience, though harrowing, taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, self-advocacy, and the importance of seeking help when facing overwhelming challenges. Looking back, I am grateful for the unwavering support of my family and the professionals who guided me through one of the darkest periods of my life. While the scars of Anna's obsession may linger, I have emerged stronger and more aware of my own strength and resilience. I am determined to move forward, focusing on healing and creating a future where I am free to live without fear of someone else's unhealthy fixation.